Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our congregation meeting online. COVID-19 is keeping us from getting together, so we're trying to get the business of the congregation done with a video and some emails and attachments. And then your votes are certainly important. Please join Pastor Pledger in our opening prayer.
It's an exciting time to be a part of Bethany Ministries. It's an important time to be voting, and obviously always an important time to bring it to the Lord in prayer. Pray with me. Lord Heavenly Father, we ask for your blessing upon this meeting, upon Ron, who's going to be presenting quite a bit of it, and we ask that you would bestow wisdom upon the whole congregation who's going to be voting on the various issues. We thank you, Lord, that you've brought us to a place such as this, in a time such as this, to meet the challenge before us of sharing the gospel to the people in the Vacaville communities. We ask for your blessing, Lord, in Jesus, your most holy and precious name. Amen.
Okay, thank you, Pastor. So for our agenda today, I'll just go over it quickly. First, we want to approve minutes from our January 19th meeting, our February 23rd pastor call meeting, and our May 24th video meeting. So we'll approve those minutes. Then we'll have an election of council. Okay, so we'll welcome Pastor Pledger. Then we'll go over our Bethany financials. We have a praise report. We want to review our property planning. We want to be sure and thank our Bethany staff who've been working hard, especially during this COVID-19 challenges. And then we can have some questions and answers about Bethany schools. And we can talk about outreach opportunities, policy manual revisions, and we can talk about maintenance and projects that have been completed. And then there'll be a question answer session online, unless someone here has a question. And then we'll have our closing prayer. So that's our agenda for today. Let's go ahead and get started on the agenda by approving our minutes. These are the minutes from our congregation meeting in January. We got to get together on that one. And it has, 63 voters were present. We had an opening prayer. We approved minutes from June 2nd. Can you keep scrolling down? Okay. We talked about the senior pastor call status. We talked about financials up to that date. So these minutes will be attached to an email, or they can be obtained by calling Carol Wilson. And I'll give you her number a little bit later at the end of the program. So all of these are minutes from that meeting, and the council has reviewed them. We believe they're totally accurate, but if anyone has some comments about them, certainly you can make those comments and we will correct them and resend them out for a second opportunity to vote on them if there are any changes that come up. All right, so then our next meeting was February 23rd, when we called Pastor Pledger. And in that meeting, we had a total voting members in attendance was 66. There were 2 candidates, and Pastor Pledger was unanimously chosen. And we're happy to say he's here with us. We're also very happy to say that we had such a great interim pastor in Pastor Hess. We want to say thank you to Pastor Hess for his good work that he did. All right, so the next meeting was just recently, May 11th through 24th, when the congregation decided to go ahead and sell Bethany Orchard property, 621 South Orchard, which includes the church and the fellowship hall, to Vacaville Unified School District based on a letter of intent. We now have a purchase and sale agreement with them, and it's been signed by both the district and Bethany based on the voters' recommendation to go ahead with that. There were 101 yes and 5 no on that ballot. And so right now the property is in escrow. We expect that the school district is asked to begin remodeling July 15th in the fellowship office space, which is the east end of the fellowship hall building. So they've asked to begin remodeling by putting in new carpet and painting. Of course, if the agreement doesn't close or gets stalled for some reason, then those would be Bethany property. So we're okay with them going ahead to do that. We just have to clear out of that space by July 15th, which we're well on the way to doing, thanks to Pat Green and some of the other preschool teachers and some volunteers working to sort through all the materials that had been stored, the preschool materials that had been stored in there. And there's a parking lot sale scheduled for June 20th from, I believe it's 10 to 2. So I don't know if you read Pastor Pledger's recent status update. As he mentioned in there, if somebody wants to buy the materials and donate them later, I'm sure the preschool would appreciate that. We are out of storage space. We could always put more sheds in, but we believe it's more cost effective to go ahead and sell the materials and buy new, although they've kept all the good things that they want to keep, and they are stored already. All right. Let's go on to the next item on the agenda. Approving those minutes will be done by email or by ballot. The next item on the agenda is our council election. We have 7 openings. 3 council members' terms have 1 more year. That's Diane Irby, Sean Sanborn, and Kurt Johnson. All 3 of those people have been on council for 3 years, and they're continuing to the 4th year. We want to say thank you to Janine Brown for her service. She was on council for the last 2 years. And we also want to say thank you to Debbie Duncan, who had to resign for family reasons, but she served faithfully for 3 years before that. Okay, so right now we have only 5 confirmed candidates. All of these candidates are incumbents and have served Bethany for the last 4 years. You might think, well, that's not fair. We should have new candidates. And I would say that all of us agree with that, to give everyone an opportunity to serve on the council and be a part of making Bethany ministry successful in a big way. But unfortunately, no nominations have come from the congregation, and no one has been willing, that we've asked, to consider being on council. So we have these 5 candidates, and we're very grateful to these people. So during the voting term that we'll have between June 14th and June 27th, you can have an opportunity to vote for each of these confirmed candidates: Hugh Hessron, Mike McCall, Karen Lowe, Carol Wilson, and myself, Ron Shively. Okay, let's go on to some Bethany financials. So this is income and expense July 2019 through March 2020. And you'll have a copy of this in your email. You'll be able to look at all of it in detail that you want to, and this is supporting data to help you with your decision when we vote for our budget for July 2020 through June 2021. So you can see that our gross profit through March is $1,884,325. And if you scroll down to the bottom of this budget, it's not a budget, it's actuals. Okay, so total operating expenses, including our total operating expenses, $1,256,100. Net operating income $438,000. There was included in the income one house sale, the sale of 61 South Orchard. That's why the number is that big, and that was for $318,000. So that increases, so that makes more sense. Orchard sale, $266,908, and that's $318,000 minus the book value and expenses. So the book value on Bethany's books that we've been depreciating was about $60,000, and there was some expenses. So that explains why the income is $1,694,000. All right. So that's our income and expense. Then we have a balance sheet. You can see that in U.S. Bank we have $1,639,638 cash, and we have a special account that includes our insurance payoff plus the sale of 661 South Orchard of $1,121,962. So our total bank accounts are $2,832,130. Now, if you could scroll down a bit, we can look at some of the. So still, in buildings, we still show $6,917,000, and in depreciation from that, $2,322,000. We also have a capital improvement of $224,000. And then we have land, both Ulatis and Orchard properties. And if you continue down, we can see some of the equity in different accounts that is dedicated for certain specific items. Accounts payable, that's things that people still owe on their accounts for the school. And then we have a long-term liability of $5.755 million for our school bond funding. Okay. And then in growing to serve, we still have 116,547. We have a scholarship fund, and Lillian Tickner actually funds that scholarship fund yearly with $4,500 from a trust. So that's the reason there's still money there. One reason, but there's also been some members contributing to that. So what that fund is used for is helping families that show a monetary or financial need based on their income tax returns, and also we're helping people who have a real need, not people who have been frivolous and think they deserve a discount or a scholarship, but people who have a real need. And that's determined by Pastor and Dr. Smith reviewing financials from the people and their application. So this year, 8 scholarships were given. And so they'll be looking at that shortly to see who may require scholarships for next year. And we thank, again, Lillian Tickner for setting up that trust for us. Okay, so there's some other funds there that you'll notice. Merciful Services still has $2,418, even though the person that was doing that is gone. Someone else could pick it up if they wanted to, but the funds were donated for that purpose, so they still show. Outreach Ministries has $15,000, so we could, if someone was willing, they could generate some interest and outreach in Vacaville community or beyond. We need volunteers to help with those. There's a food program, so we could maybe have Saturday lunches and crafts and stuff like that if someone wanted to get that organized. There's emergency assistance for members or people in the community that we can give funds to. There's a funeral fund for someone who, I'm not sure let's see, the funeral fund would be for someone who couldn't afford a funeral, but we want to give it to them. LW Mail has fundraisers every year, and they have $4,934. There's an endowment fund that's permanently restricted. We can only use the interest from that fund, although we've been letting it grow. So the capital improvement fund that you see there is $858,000. That's the insurance money left over. There's technology infrastructure now. Dr. Smith has been very good at getting grants, and that's where that money has come from. So any technology that we need for the school, we can use it from those grants. And this year, I think he has $29,000 in grants. If we don't use it all, we lose it, but it's there if there's some good reasons for some technology that we want to put in place. Okay, and then there's some there's the auction, the school auction generated $23,000. And if we look down, we have schools do have funds dedicated for each classroom. Some have been used and some haven't. So if you could continue scrolling down. So those are the classroom funds available. And you notice in retained earnings, we have $3 million. Now, part of that is actually has paid down our mortgage. So that's why that number is bigger than the cash on hand. So all told, we have total liabilities and equity of $10,558,000. Okay, so those are that's the balance sheet. If anybody has any questions, please send those in when you get the email from Carol, or you can send them into the church to her directly, or to the church office. And any questions, council will respond. All right, so let's bring up our current year projection to the end of the year. So I just wanted to point out this year our offerings are up. A lot of that due to the fact, of course, everyone is giving through offerings, either weekly or monthly, but also there's a matching fund set up of $107,000, of which $16,000 has already been matched. So that's why our giving is way above our approved budget of $380,000. Now we can look at our tuition income is lower this year than was budgeted. Enrollment is a little less, and also because of COVID-19, our tuition was lower. Now, we can continue scrolling down. Okay, so if you look at 427, those partnership hours are paid at the end of the year. We're not sure how much they're going to be yet. Our extended care is low this year because of COVID-19. We budgeted 50,000, but we only have received 37,000. A lot of it because kids are not at school. Okay, so we can scroll down a little farther. Let's see, our fundraising. If you look at the fundraising here on 445, we have 38,000 generated, less 11,000 in fundraising costs. So altogether, we approved 30,000. That's not including the costs. So we beat our goal, but then the costs lower the amount that we actually realize. Now our total income was expected to be 1.8 million, but we're only at 1.7 million. So let's go down and look at expenses. You'll be able to look at all these in detail. Let's just scroll down to the spots that have notes, and we can talk about things that were somewhat different than expected. Okay, so one of the expenses we have is professional services. We usually have an audit, but we're also including a bookkeeper this year. So that's why our expenses are a little bit higher. Okay, so hold on here. Pastoral staff, interim part-time for 10 months, and now we have a full-time pastor. So that's why this is lower than we would have expected. Now, total salaries are projected out to be $848,466, which is lower than budgeted because some of the teachers did not work the whole year because of COVID-19. So let's go ahead and go down a little farther. So our total expenses were 1.6 million instead of 1.7 million. You can see our net operating income is 140,000. We budgeted 89. Now, based on the two house sales at South Orchard property, both the Warren House and 661 South Orchard, was 585,000. And we've had some additional fire insurance payout. It was mainly for the fence that was around the building and also for contents of the building that they paid off the rest of it. So our other income was not budgeted, but it's significant. Of course, the book value of the two houses was 240,000. That was still on our books, so we have to show that as like a depreciated expense. It's not depreciation, but it's book value that has to come off of our balance sheet. And so our net change in assets, even though we sold the property, our net change in assets is $377,000. Now, in November, we paid $180,000 principal on our loan. That's why it's $5.755 million we talked about earlier on the balance sheet. So that means we're $157,000 ahead in total. Now, if you subtract out these expenses that aren't really expenses, that don't require any cash, you really have a net cash change of $561,610. Now, one thing that's going to help us next year, and we'll show you in our budget, is our payroll protection program loan that we got from the federal government is sitting in First Northern Bank account that money is being used to pay for our payroll in the last 2 months of the year. We brought back some of the preschool teachers starting in May, and preschool reopened. It closed in March and reopened in May on a limited scale based on licensing's COVID-19 requirements or limitations. We have 20 preschoolers in the preschool. Okay, so that covers our current year projected to the end of the year. So now I'm going to turn the program over to Kurt Johnson, who's going to tell us about the budget for next year.
Okay, hi, glad to be here today. This is Kurt Johnston. What I'm going to do is go over the budget, but we're going to go a little bit beyond the numbers. You'll see forms that look very close to what Ron just showed you, but like I said, there was a lot of background work that's been done over the course of the last year so that we have a better understanding of the budget and how it was developed. The other thing I want to tell you is that this information is actually being placed into a 4-year budget. So we're not just going to look at budget projections for this year. We're actually looking for the next 3 years beyond that. And ultimately, this information should be used to refinance our debt to actually lower our cost or remain the same. So a little bit of summary to begin. We do a budget for all of Bethany, the ministry as a whole, but what you'll see is information for the church, the preschool, and the school. Our projection is total income of about $2 million. Ron mentioned earlier that it was about 1.7 this year. We're looking at about $2 million, so it's a slight increase. We are actually going to see growth in the school. The preschool is pretty much locked in because we've only got 2 classrooms at Ulatis Drive, but the school is growing, and it's growing. I'll actually show you those numbers. Our expenses stay about the same, a 1.7, and our net operating income, that's simply looking at the total income, the total expenses, and then what do we net at the end of the day. I think Ron mentioned it's ended about 170 this year, so we're looking at 300,000 for next year. Then we have other net income, and this net income simply takes the primary source is the sale of this property. The sale is $2.4 million. We have about $50,000 in closing cost. And then there's a book value of this property, which is a depreciated value of a little less than $400,000. So we end up having a net other income of $2 million, and then you combine that on the operating income of $300,000. That means the change in our net assets, the actual money that we have in the bank at the end of the year, is $2.3 million. Now, as Ron mentioned, there's additional funds that come because each year the accountants make us depreciate all of our assets, our fixed assets like the buildings and things like that. So there's a total of about $500,000 that we have to appreciate. But the reality is it is cold hard cash. It's just on the books, not shown that way. So what I'm going to do is go over, essentially there's 3 pages of our budget. This is going to be I know it's very hard to see. So what I would encourage you to do is actually get copies. If you can, stop by the church office or ask them to be mailed to you. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Good note there from Ron that there'll be an email as well. So you'll see this, and on here you'll see our different sources of income. It's the big number is actually from church donations that's $368,000 this year. It adds to that total of $2 million in income. So you'll see those things there. The big part of this is tuition. It's tuition from the school and the preschool. The preschool tuition is pretty much freezed because we've only got 2 classrooms available this year, but the school will see growth. So that's our income numbers. And I'm going to get behind the scenes so you actually get a better understanding of this numbers. And then we go through expenses. And I think the best thing to do is just let you take a look at the details when you actually get your copies or your emails, but you'll see different traditional budget line items that Bethany has had for many years. Actually, the line to the number to the left is actually our account number that comes out of our QuickBooks system. So this is aligned with that. Now there's particular sheets that provide details on how much the church will spend. In the gray, there's 4 different columns. The left column is the church. The next one to the right is the preschool, or a school, I'm sorry. And then you got the preschool and then the shared expenses. Shared expenses are simply where there's a line item and we can't assign it to any one particular budget, whether it's the church or the preschool or the school. So we just combine it into that number. So you can take a closer look at those as you do. And then we go through a whole line here. Now, this is janitorial supplies, and below, about the middle of the page, is where you will see operating expenses for the school. As an example, there's a curriculum budget there for both the school and the preschool. That is increasing because we have an increase in students of the school. Yeah, those are really important numbers, and you're going to see when we get into the back numbers what that means there. So that's what this information is. And then we come down to the summary, and what I've done here is highlighted in yellow the different sections. And you see at the end where our expenses are 1.7 million. We end up with a net operating income of about 300,000. And then this year we have a debt service payment of about 185,000. Now that's U.S. Bank, and that is a payment toward the principal. And the key on our existing loan is that it is a tax-exempt loan, so it's lower than what it would be from a normal commercial bank. But the way this loan was structured is the principal payments, or the payments toward the actual total loan amount, were structured so that they were very low in the early years, and then they rise over time. So each and every year with this current loan, we're seeing a principal payment in November each year going up by $5,000 or $10,000. Last year it was $180. Ron mentioned that. We made a payment in November. This coming November, toward the end of the year, it'll be $185. And then it just keeps going up, $5,000 or $10,000 a year. And over time, it gets as high as $400,000. So that's a real concern to us. So one of the things we're taking a look at is to try to take a new loan, and there are actually new loans in this environment that are less expensive, the fees aren't so high, and we can level out those payments so that we can have a payment that's level, even at a less amount than we're paying right now, whereas this payment is ultimately going to go up each and every year. We're looking for a level payment. I wanted to note, too, I put a note there that our current loan amount is 5.75. We mentioned that at the when we were talking about selling this property, what our loan was, 5.75. When we make the $180,000 payment, you know, that goes down by that amount. So that's the really good news. Years ago, when we built the Ulatis campus, we started out with almost $7.6 million in loan principal, the actual amount we borrowed. And now that's down by $2 million. So that's really good news. Okay, now I want to show some numbers. I know this is still hard, but to see. But what it is a summary. One of the things I wanted to do to show the congregation was staff. This is a summary of staff costs. So you see broken down by different areas through the church, the preschool, and the school, and what those costs are. So, you know, pastors here, you see pastor's salary, you see the total teaching salaries, the total preschool aides, you see substitutes, and you see our summer wages as well. So all of that is summarized on that sheet. Those sheets tie into, here's an example of the church staff cost. You see a monthly and an annual salary. And then we do not have Ron and myself and Diane Irby and so many other people are actually volunteering so that we don't need to have a business administrator this year. Well, I say don't need. We still need a business administrator, but we're volunteering our time so that we don't have to hire that person right now. But I do want to mention that there's a janitor. Before they were a contract employee, Lolly, that was here for so many years. She's moved on, and now we have a janitor that works for both the church and the school and the preschool. So that is part of our employee cost. Then this is information that people have been asking for many, many years about, well, what are the salaries? And this is a page that goes over the salaries at the preschool. Now, one thing when we were studying the budget and hearing feedback from staff is that our preschool staff had pay lower than what it should have been. So there is a $1 raise from the basic instructional staff for the preschool from 15 to 16, and the part-time staff from 14 to 15. That is something that when Pastor Pledger came here, he was concerned about it, raised it to us. We've also heard from the district there's concern about how low our salaries are. So you can't do it in 1 year, but there'll be a consistent march. When we show the 3 and 4 year budget, you will see that Bethany's making a commitment to one of our significant asset, which is our staff. We love them, we want to keep them here, so we have to increase those wages. Now, I will say on the preschool director, we're not sure what's going to happen with that position. If Cindy Miller is able to stay, there will be a raise there, but that's the current salary. On the school staff, what we've done here is that these are the teachers, the administration staff, and the teachers. You see off the top right, there's a 2.5% COLA. So that's a cost of living adjustment. So we're going to maintain that 2% COLA through the next years. We'll also look at 2% tuition and 2.5% tuition enhancements as well. But what you see there, it's about 5 or 6 lines down. It's $42,720. That is an average full-time teacher salary. So in the budget, for budget projections, everything is based on that average salary. Now, it's not the actual salary of staff, but it's the average of the teaching staff. You'll see staff that are full-time, 3/4 time, and half-time, but everything is built. The bottom line number, the $469,000, is within just a couple $100 of what the actual number will be in our conversations with Dr. Smith, the school principal. But we wanted to reflect it as an average salary. So that's what you have here. And you'll see how the teaching staff is broken down into different areas and subjects and things like that. The middle school, obviously, is structured where there's a homeroom and the students go to multiple teachers during the day. The grade school, of course, has a consistent teacher throughout the day. There is a 1-2 combo class being planned for next year. Now, within this structure, you'll actually see more information as we develop about what the student counts will be. But there is room, while maintaining the existing staff, there's room for growth in the school, and that is significant. So as we go through, here's additional school staff I wasn't able to fit, but there's the teaching aides and the substitutes, and then the summer program we're hoping to have this year, but we don't have summer school expenses. So that's the information I did want to show. There's one thing that I haven't got, one sheet that I don't have up there that I will provide you in the email. It's actually the number of students that we have. We're looking at 152 in the school and a full-time equivalent of about 48 in the preschool. those numbers will grow, because this year we're just about a little less than 100 students in the school, and we're planning on growing all the way to 150 just by using the existing staff and filling up the schools. And those are real numbers. One thing that Dr. Smith told us, Ron and I have met with him a couple times over the course of the last 2 weeks, and enrollment as of the 1st of June, essentially, or roundabout now, is nearing 90 students. And this time last year, it was in the 40s, like 42. So we're seeing that's a significant increase in actual parents that are committing their students to Bethany. That's a really strong number. So based on those numbers, what he's seeing, and the growth that we're seeing across particularly the younger grades, there we're going to have 150 students. And those numbers will grow over the course of the next 3 years to over 220 students. Now, years ago, we were at 220 students, so that we know the facility can handle it. But that's on the school side. What will happen on the preschool side is you'll see a tremendous amount of growth, because we start the preschool with basically 2 functional classrooms this year, which each classroom has essentially 2 classes in it. They're split between full-time and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday, but essentially 4 working classrooms in two rooms. Next year, we go up to 3, and if we're able to build the additional building, what we refer to as Building E, that would allow us to go all the way to 5 classrooms, which is equivalent to 10 classes of preschool students. The classrooms are designed for 24 students, but there's 2 classes of 12 essentially in each one of those. So that's where our growth is going to be. We're actually projecting that our income will grow by $1 million within just 3 years. And in that $1 million, our expenses grow, but nowhere near as much by the revenue. So Bethany, where we were highly leveraged in the past, we can handle this debt load. As a matter of fact, we could handle, I hate to say this because I've always said no more debt, but with the lower cost in financing, we think we're going to be able to have a little bit higher debt, but with less or equal debt service. So we're able to handle this. We're no longer highly leveraged. Our goal as a council is, and what Pastor is encouraging us to do, is plan for the future. And we believe those plans will include additional pastoral staff and also seeing growth in the school. One more thing I want to mention at the school, this is kind of a COVID-19 thing. Dr. Smith has identified students that want to do homeschooling. So our budget actually includes $90,000 next year for 20 students that would be homeschooled, and it would be coordinated by Bethany. That's a current demand. There's already 14 students signed up for that program as of today. So we're seeing great demand there. So COVID-19 hurt us, but it's also helping us. As Ron mentioned earlier, we got $213,000 from the payroll protection plan through First Northern Bank. That's the federal loan program that you heard so much about. So things are looking up at Bethany. Take a look at the details when you get them, and be sure to contact us and send us an email through the church office, and we'll be happy to respond. Thank you. Ron?
So we've gone through our income and expense and balance sheets. We've gone through the forecast to June 30th this year. We've gone through a proposed budget that we're going to ask you to vote on in the email or letter that you receive. We'll have attachments of all of the supporting documents, and we'll ask you to vote on that. Now, Bethany tax-exempt bond refinancing status. We have answered questions from First Northern Bank, who said they're interested in refinancing our loan, depending on if we qualify. We don't know the terms yet. They haven't made an offer to us. And then the other thing is we have a forgivable loan, PPP loan, and the forgivable expenses to date are approximately $100,000. So, but we expect that to be $213,000 by the end of June. Praise report. Well, you remember that we have an anonymous matching fund set up by some members of Bethany, $107,000. Matched so far, $16,000. So people are really considering how they can help Bethany reach our goal of fundraising for the preschool. Property planning. Do you want to talk about that for a minute, Kurt? Okay.
Thanks, Ron. So don't want to spend too much time on this, but it really is exciting for Bethany. We are in the process of designing 2 buildings. The preschool should be within the next week into plan check. So that it's actually been approved by the city of Vacaville. It's gone through the planning commission, all its environmental review. Now it's time to submit for a building permit. And we expected that to be done within last week or so. But we're hoping that we will have it within the next few days. Literally within a week it should be in. But more significantly, we will get the final cost estimate. That's really what we've been waiting for on that building. It's really crucial. The design essentially hasn't changed, but it's going through that detail. Once we get that cost estimate, unfortunately, we are seeing some increase in material. Labor seems to be fine, not a concern, but it is an increasing cost of material. The next project that we're working on is the design of a new sanctuary. We've only had 1 meeting on that, and literally tomorrow we have our second meeting with the architect and staff to talk about how that building will proceed. As we've mentioned before, we are looking at a sanctuary of equivalent size to what we have now. So that's how those projects are moving on. As soon as we're able to sell this property, then we will be able to start on the preschool. That's likely the first building that would start on the preschool. However, we are trying to get a new loan in place, if that's possible, before construction. Once construction starts, it's impossible to get new loans. You have mechanics liens and things like that. So this is our window of opportunity when interest rates are low. And before we go through that plan check process on the preschool, we probably have at least 2 or 3 months before we start construction. So this is a time to do that refinance. Ron, anything else you think we need to cover?
Thank you, Kurt. Okay, it's an exciting time, as Kurt said. And our next agenda item, we certainly want to say a big thank you to Bethany staff, who've had a multitude of challenges this year with COVID-19 pandemic and preschool teachers being out of work for a while. But now they're back, some of them. So it's been a challenge, but we're looking forward to a better year. Now, if you have questions about Bethany's schools, you can send those questions when you get your email. You can reply to the email and send questions, or you can call Carol Wilson, and she'll collect the questions. Council certainly will try to answer it, and we'll get Dr. Smith and Cindy Miller's input. So that's Bethany Schools Q&A. We've already told you some exciting things that are happening in the schools. Kurt talked about that for next year. Now, we would like to reach out to our young families in the schools and also in the Vacaville community, but we really need some help. We need some sponsors to get some events going, like possibly parenting classes or personal finance classes. Those have been requested, but we're short anyone willing to get it organized. And also we talked about a Saturday lunch and crafts events that we could use existing funds from our balance sheet to cover the expenses of, but also we can sell lunches. So it could be a fundraiser also. We've done a lot of work on a policy manual to make it more accurate, more clear. Those revisions are still in process to cover some areas that the policy manual didn't actually cover before, but are really needed. Mike McCall has been real busy this year with a lot of maintenance projects and new projects. I could let him talk a little.
Hello, everybody. Mike McCall here. As we all know, to operate our church, it takes a lot of volunteers and a lot of work and effort. And I think we've seen in this meeting some of those many hours that were put in by Kurt Johnston and Ron Shively putting together our budget, which I think is an awesome budget that is very transparent, that we all are going to enjoy in the years to come, give us better financial information. But as far as projects that we've completed, we've mostly been focusing on moving the preschool over to the school and moving out of the buildings, moving stuff here and there and everywhere. If you've been in church, you obviously have seen how much of that has taken place. We're always painting and digging ditches here and there and cutting trees and whatnot, but those, most of our efforts have been towards the move, and we will continue to do that, and we're always on call for emergencies and so forth. So that's kind of where we're at. Thank you.
Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about on the agenda is how do you vote? It's a little bit of a challenge since we're not together. We can't just have a ballot in front of us. So we'll be sending out an email and a letter that will have instructions on how to vote. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we can't meet together, but we've put together this presentation to help you understand the items that we need voted on. We'll be sending you some documents to help make your decisions. And they'll be attached to an email from Carol Wilson at gobethany.com, or you can call the number 530-867-7078 for paper copies that you can pick up in the church office. Your votes are important to Bethany Lutheran Ministries. Please prayerfully consider the items that need to be voted on. And once you decide, please vote on each item listed below. So first we want to approve the minutes from a congregation, past congregation meetings. So for each, circle one yes or no for each minute date. So January 19th, yes or no. February 23rd, yes or no. March 24th, yes or no. Council election, we had 7 openings, but only 5 confirmed candidates. All of those candidates have served the last 4 years. No new names were submitted by the congregation or offers to consider being on council member. So Hugh Hesserman, yes or no. Mike McCall, yes or no. Karen Lowe, yes or no. Carol Wilson, yes or no. Ron Shively, yes or no. The continuing council members, all have already served for 3 years. Diane Irby, Sean Sanborn, Kurt Johnson. And thanks to Janine Brown for her 2 years of service. It's an exciting time for Bethany, so I encourage you, if you have any inclination to want to be a part of Bethany in a big way, this is a time we can still appoint you. There's 2 more openings that we haven't filled with this ballot. with this slate of candidates. So just let somebody on council know that you're interested, or nominate somebody after you ask them, and we can appoint them. So for Bethany Financials, we have one vote. We want you to vote yes or no on the proposed budget for 2020-2021. And the supporting documents that will be in the email, or that you can get paper copies of, income, expense, and balance sheets that we showed you through March 2020, the forecast to June 30th, and the proposed budget. If you have any questions, email those questions to Carol Wilson at gobethany.com by June 24th, or telephone, and Bethany Council will respond to all your questions. Email your votes to carol.wilson at gobethany.com, or by paper ballot in the church office by June 27th. The votes will be tallied June 28th. So we thank you all for your continued support of Bethany Lutheran Ministries. And on behalf of you, Bethany congregation, Ron Shively signing off. So we ask Pastor if he'd be willing to close us in prayer.
And again, Lord, we come before you giving you thanks and praise for your presence among us. We ask that you would give wisdom to the voters and allow us to have clarity of thought regarding the opportunities that you lay before us. Allow us to recognize that we are to vote with sober judgment, but also we are to be people of faith, recognizing that you've called us to Vacaville, you've called us to this great ministry, and you've called us to make a positive difference in this community for the cause of Christ. Allow us to vote accordingly. In your blessed and holy name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. So for now, we're signing off, and we look forward to hearing from you questions by June 24th, and we'll answer those, and we ask for your ballot by June 27th so that we can count them all on June 28th.